The University of Guelph would like to acknowledge the Atawandaron people on whose traditional territory the University of Guelph resides, and to offer respect to our Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Métis neighbors as we strengthen our relationships with them. Convocation is a time of gratitude, a time of thanksgiving, but also a time of great humility. Convocation is a time that we recognize that none of us can make accomplishments like this on our own. We need each other. Indeed, we are connected to each other. Our Indigenous brothers and sisters in this country and around the world recognize that much more readily than often we do as people from a Western civilization. The word Canada actually comes from an Algonquin word which means kanata, and it means village. It is a way of being, a way of recognizing that we are all connected, that we are all interconnected, that we are all interrelated. And it is experienced, that sense of interconnection, interrelation, today, on this day of convocation. Everyone who crosses this stage does so with the recognition that they are not alone. And so they and we give thanks for family and those who support us, not just as those people who say, you've had this great opportunity, we've paid for it, now don't blow it, but rather as those who love, support, care, and encourage. We give thanks to professors and those teachers, not as tyrants who are asking for yet another paper or another project, but rather as fellow human beings, elders, if you would, sharing their knowledge, their skill, their art, their wisdom. We give thanks for university support staff, including physical resources, not just as shadows who pass by without seeing or being seen, but rather as people who care about providing a safe and hospitable environment for living and for learning. And we give thanks for fellow students, not as competitors, but as compatriots on the journey, people who have nourished us, supported us, and encouraged us. Yes, today is a time of thanksgiving, of gratitude, and of humility. To all that is sacred to us, we give thanks in a spirit of love one to the other. Amen. And you may be seated.
Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Vice Chancellor, members of the board, fellows, faculty and staff, family and friends, and graduands, welcome to the celebration of convocation at the University of Guelph. I'd also like to extend a special welcome this afternoon to our honorary degree recipient, Jean Tihe, who will be formally introduced to you in a moment. I'm Maureen Mancuso, the Provost and the Vice President Academic, and I'm privileged to have the honor of opening this ceremony on behalf of the university. And I'd like to officially congratulate you, our graduands, on your momentous achievement. I hope you will take a minute, though, and join me in thanking the many people, family, friends, and mentors who have supported, encouraged, and assisted you in the pursuit of your studies. Today, we mark the end of one chapter of your lives and the beginning of a new one. You made it here today through years of effort and hard work. Now it's time to turn towards other goals and new challenges of increasing complexity and impact. Your journey of learning did not begin here at Guelph, nor does it end here today. If anything, it builds upon your experiences of the last few years to become more arduous, more enlightening, more productive, and more fulfilling. You came here to develop the possibilities and resources of your own minds. You came here to change your lives, to devote some time to learning essential skills and acquiring knowledge, to challenge yourselves and extend your capabilities. Here, in our community of scholars, you had the freedom to learn about the world and to learn about yourself. We hope you learned a great deal about how you will fit into and affect the world. We hope you see your path more clearly and that you see how your contributions on that path can lead to a better world. We have tried to help you prepare by opening your eyes to ideas you might not have encountered, cultures of which you are unaware, perspectives that sometimes complement and contrast with your own. We have tried to help you to think critically, to reject simplistic answers to complex questions, and to refuse the empty satisfaction of half-truths and partial solutions. Ultimately, though, we have shared with you one fundamental lesson. There's always more to learn. It's now up to you to start applying that lesson and those skills. We send you forth as representatives of the University of Guelph, and we know you will make us proud, and we hope you're proud to wear the Guelph name. As you probably noticed, even when you were first applying to universities, we eagerly call attention to the exploits of our graduates. Be one of those people whose accomplishments we trumpet. Be someone who makes a mark on the world, someone who demonstrates the power and the potential of higher education. Take this responsibility seriously, because to quote my favorite fake US president, the West Wing's Jed Bartlett, decisions are made by those who show up. So now I say to you graduates, flush with the pride and powers of the finest education we know how to provide, show up. Show up in your own lives and live them critically, live them wisely. Show up in the lives of others, family, friends, and strangers, and make them better, directly or indirectly, however you can. Show up in the world, not just as pictures on Facebook, but as someone who makes a difference, even if that difference is harder to discern and doesn't go viral on YouTube. Most especially, show up as caring, active citizens of your country, your city, your world. And that today means voting in the provincial election. Wherever your future leads you, please don't forget that even though you may no longer be on campus, you are still part of our community. Your association with Guelph, like your journey of learning, is lifelong. We hope you will feel welcome to return from time to time to share your experiences and accomplishments with your fellow alumni, your former professors, and the future students who will follow in your footsteps. And so once again, I bid you welcome. Enjoy this ceremony, take pride in what it represents, and remember all of those who have helped to make this day possible. I offer you my personal congratulations and every best wish.
Mr. Chancellor, on recommendation of the Senate of the University of Guelph, it is my great honor to present to you Jean Thayer for the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Ms. Jean Thayer is a Métis lawyer who is recognized both nationally and internationally for her impact on Aboriginal rights law in Canada. She is the great-grandniece of Louis Riel and follows his example in her devotion to advocating for and advancing the right of Métis and First Nations peoples. She was a professional dancer and visual artist before embarking on an illustrious legal career that has resulted in a number of milestones, including the landmark R.V. Powley case, in which the Supreme Court of Canada acknowledged the constitutional protection of Métis harvesting rights in Ontario. She has been involved in numerous significant treaty negotiations and is the founding president of the Métis Nation Lawyers Association and a founding member of the Métis Nation of Ontario. Jean Tayé is a strong advocate for Aboriginal education and lifelong learning. She has served on the Inspire Board of Directors since 2006 and is currently Vice Chair. Inspire is the largest supporter of Indigenous education outside of the federal government, having awarded more than $54 million to 16,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis recipients nationwide. Ms. Tayé frequently lectures in Canada and internationally about Aboriginal rights, identity, access to justice, and has been published in scholarly journals. Her dedication and commitment to the rights of Aboriginal people and communities was recognized in 2002 when she became the inaugural recipient of the Law Society of Upper Canada's Lincoln Alexander Award for her work as an Aboriginal role model and mentor. And again in 2012 when she received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. For her service, passion, and groundbreaking work in the areas of Aboriginal rights, community, education, the University of Guelph is proud to recognize Jean Tayé with the honorary degree. I ask you, Mr. Chancellor, to confer upon Jean Tayé the degree Doctorate of Laws honoris causa.
By the authority of the Senate of the University of Guelph, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws. Congratulations, Jean. Thank you. Dr. Jean Tayé will now deliver the convocation address.
Good afternoon. Bonjour. Bonjour. Tansé. Those are all, some of those are Aboriginal languages. I want to begin the address by acknowledging my own Aboriginal roots. My paternal grandmother was Sarah Riel, and Sarah's father, my great-grandfather, was Louis Riel's younger brother. So Louis Riel is either my great-grand-uncle or I'm his great-grand-niece, whichever way you want to look down the chain. My work as an Aboriginal rights lawyer has been largely influenced by my decision to try to carve out some law for the Métis in this country. Law which until then just simply didn't exist. And I usually jokingly say that until our first Métis case went to the Supreme Court of Canada, we couldn't even get the janitor in the federal government to talk to us. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but not far off the mark. The world has changed since then. The governments in this country have decided that there really are Métis people here. There seemed to be a myth that when they hanged Louis Riel, they magically wiped out thousands of people. So I'm very proud to have been part of bringing the Métis back into the recognition of Canadian history. We aren't all dead. We didn't all die in 1885. So my decision to bring the Métis into legal institutions was a choice that I made very early on in my legal career. And it turned out to be one of the turning points of my life, but it wasn't the first turning point choice. In fact, law, as the citation noted, is my second career. I was sitting exactly where you are in the early 70s, and I had written the law school entrance exams and I had auditioned for dance companies, and I was accepted by both. And I walked around in a daze for weeks trying to figure out what to do with my life. Which way do you want to go? And I have to tell you, my mother is here, but my parents hated both ideas. Right? Okay, so you're all too young, but this was the early 70s, and in those days, there were very few women in law. In fact, there were very few women in professions, period. We were raised to be nurses or teachers, and you only did that until you got to your real job, which was to get married, because you see, we were all sent to university to find husbands. We weren't really sent there for an education. So the idea that I wanted a career of any kind was not exactly the idea. So, and as you might guess from the fact that now there are many women in the professions, we weren't very good at listening to the advice from the generation before. So We wanted careers, and I wanted to be a dancer and a lawyer, but I had to make a choice. So how to make it? My way is just, and I recommend it highly, to talk to everybody you know. Tell them what you're thinking about, ask your friends for advice, ask your aunts and uncles, talk to your grandmother, talk to the people next door. And so, but after talking to everybody, there were two stories that really influenced me, and one was my neighbor that I used to babysit for. She told me that she and her husband, when they first got married, went up to Churchill, Manitoba to make a lot of money, to make their nest egg, and then they had enough for a down payment, and they were going to come back down, buy a house, have kids. It's the same thing that many people do today to go to the oil sands, right? Young men go up to work and make money and come back with it. And they went up, they worked, they made their money, and they came back, and just as they came back, Ian turned to her and he said, "Margaret, let's go on a trip around the world. Let's just go for an adventure. Let's have an adventure before we settle down and have kids." And she said, no, we have the house, we want to buy the house, we want to settle down. And what she said to me many, many years later was she always regretted it. She lived her whole life regretting that they never did that she missed an opportunity to have that adventure that she thinks would have changed their lives. The second story was another story of regret, comes from my dad, who everybody always said was a great athlete. Oh, your dad could have played in Major League Baseball. Oh, your dad could have played in the NHL. Unfortunately for him, the Second World War got in the way. And he lived a life of regret too, but his was toned differently. Margaret was more, "I wish I had," and he was more of a braggart. "I could have been a contender." I decided, my choice was, I wasn't going to do any of those. I wasn't going to live a life of regret. I didn't want to look back when I was 40 and say, "I wish I had," or "I could have been." Now, I have to tell you that my choice was, okay, dancing is a professional athlete. You got to do it when you're young. I could be a lawyer when I was 40. I have to tell you, 40, when I was sitting where you are, was as old as I could imagine being, okay? So I did it. I decided to dive into the dance world, and I spent 20 years of what I consider the beautiful life. It was a glorious time. Being an artist is truly a great thing to do, to be a creative person, whichever, music, dance, theater, art, sculpture, it doesn't matter. That kind of life is a beautiful life. Now, my career, to quote John Gray, I was not the star of my dreams, but I wasn't the flop of my fears either. I got to dance in a great company, and I had wonderful parts, and I toured around, and I loved the life. But by the time I was in my mid-30s, my body was starting to scream at me, and I knew it was time to start thinking about something else. I tried producing and directing, but quite frankly, I am administratively challenged, and I don't like that part of work. So I decided that I would, and I had put my law dreams totally asleep. While I revived them, wrote the law school exams, and went to the University of Toronto. And it was an exciting time to be there. Meech Lake had just happened. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms was new. Aboriginal rights since 1985 was a brand new field of law, and it was in the middle of the Charlottetown round of discussions. So everybody was talking about what do we want our society to be and how do we make it that way. And that is what constitutional law is. It is the rules of society. It's about what do we want this place we call Canada to be? What kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where we look after our sick and our old and our people who are mentally needing us? Or do we want to shunt them aside and leave them without help? These are the big questions of our society. So I made a choice to invest some of my energy in the institution and in institutions, period, because if I can impress upon you something, it is to say that institutions are incredibly important in this society. This is an institution, this university, but the idea of university, of schooling, of education, that's an institution that's important. And my decision was to invest every year, give something to the institutions that I was in. And this is influenced by one of my Uncle Roger, who was a navigator in the Second World War, shot down over France, spent time in a prisoner of war camp. But he made perhaps a gesture that I think is maybe the most romantic gesture I've ever heard of. What he did before he went overseas was he went to a florist in St. Boniface, Manitoba, which is where we're all from, and he arranged to have a single red rose delivered to my aunt, his wife, every Friday while he was overseas. Now, he was shot down and missing in action for 2 years. She didn't know if he was alive or dead, but that rose kept coming every week. It was his gesture of faith in her, in their love, and that he would come back. So to me, I've adopted that as my symbol. So when I'm in an institution of any kind, I decided that I would plant roses wherever I went. So first year that I was in law school, I created a logo for the Native Law Students Association because I'm an artist. I drew and designed and created a logo for them. They needed one. The second year, I created a duplicate of the two-row wampum belt, which is a symbol of how Aboriginal people believe the law should be in this world, that you don't have to absorb everybody in you. As long as there is respect and honor and integrity and truth in dealing with each other, you can have different systems of law. You can be working together. And in the third year, I created the Aboriginal moot, which is a tradition that is there for all kinds of other disciplines, but wasn't there for Aboriginal issues. And that moot just celebrated its 20th anniversary in March with 15 law schools participating. So I was pretty proud of that. These are my roses. They don't have my name on them. They don't do anything like that. They are just given to gift as a gift. So I want to tell you one more story before I wrap this all up. But this is a story. I was very privileged a few years ago to hear General Romeo Dallaire tell a story about his time in the Rwandan War. And he said that he believed there was something uniquely Canadian, that we have a moral fiber. There is something about us that's different. This is a man who was commanding 5 separate armies, Americans, Belgians, French, Dutch, and Canadian soldiers, young people like yourself. They were your age. And he said they were going through Rwanda chasing the rebels, and in the first few villages, everybody in the village was slaughtered. And it was a devastating thing, but they kept plowing through, trying to catch them. By the time they got to the 4th village, some of the people were actually still alive, badly wounded, but they needed help. The American army plowed through, the Belgians plowed through, the French plowed through, the Dutch, they at least slowed down to try and get on their phones to talk to their head of higher-ups to see whether they should stop and help these people. And Dallaire turned around to try and talk to the Canadians, and he said, they didn't even stop. They were already in the ditches. Those young men and women from Canada, they were already in the ditches helping those people at some risk to themselves because there was blood everywhere and there's HIV everywhere and AIDS everywhere. And they dived in and they didn't ask for directions because they knew the right thing to do. And General Dallaire said, this is what all the world should be like. And these were young Canadians. They didn't need anybody to tell them. They just knew. I thought it was a very inspiring story, and I believe that it's right. I think it's true that there is a Canadian spirit of sharing and of giving back, and that is the most important thing you can do. You learn everything the best you can, you do the best you can, and then what you've learned by way of truth and beauty and honor, you give it back to your community, and that's the only game on the planet worth playing. Everything else is just a simple way of living. If you give it back, it will pay back to you. So I say to you at this turning point in your lives, where you're going to make decisions, big decisions about where you go and what you do. Mary Oliver, the wonderful poet, if you're not familiar with her, has a wonderful line. She says, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? And I ask you to ask yourself that, and I urge you, because I think you are the best of our best. sitting here. You are, truly. So that's what this great university has trained you to do, to take lead in this world. And I want you to make choices that will be based on that generous, sharing Canadian identity, that you will then be the best of humanity on this planet. And I hope you won't live lives of regret, that you'll take leaps of faith, try things, fall on your face. If you don't fall flat on your face, sometimes you're not doing interesting enough things. You're playing it too safe. Take those leaps of faith, and I hope that you will plant roses everywhere you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, for those personal and inspiring words. Well, the moment has now arrived. Will members of the graduating class please rise? Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you these scholars who have fulfilled the statutory requirements laid down by the Senate of the University of Guelph that they may be admitted to their various and several degrees.
By virtue of the authority vested in me and in the University of Guelph, I hereby accept you for admission to your various and several degrees with all the rights, privileges, and obligations appertaining thereto.
Will members of the graduating class please be seated?
All right, the moment is here. They've finally made it this far. You're going to be very excited, but could I ask you to hold your applause, please, to after each of the three groups has gone by. However, should you wish to leap in the air and yell, hallelujah, or, oh, thank God at last, or something like that, or hug your neighbor, that's all quite acceptable. Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you these scholars from the College of Arts that they may be admitted to the degree of Bachelor of Arts Honors Program. Sean Peter Abraham. Alida Elizabeth Alemano with distinction. Nicole Marie Johanne Alonso de Mesa with distinction. Haley Arts. Victoria Caitlin Ballog. Taylor Alexandra Barker. Brittany Catherine Balai with distinction. Rachel Elizabeth Black with distinction. Madeline Broderick. Erin Nicole Boudra with distinction. Kathleen Jacqueline Burke. Leah Eliza Carlton. Stephanie Diane Cascanet with distinction. Julia Elizabeth Cecile with distinction. Bowie Shu with distinction. Shannon Michelle Church. Mia Chakovich. Sheila Kathleen Costello. Holly Elise Cotton. Vanessa Victoria Craig, with distinction. Nicole Duarte da Costa. Elisa DeHoop. Adrian Lisa DiCarlo. Alexandra Di Felice. Madeline Bernadette Rose Donnelly. Denny Doss. Jenna Ecclestone. Sarah Michelle Edgar. Emily Ann Egan. Braden Christopher Etienne. Jocelyn Fletcher, with distinction. Ashley Ann Freak. Jordan Lorne Fry. Lisa Marie Fafaro. Corrine Jennifer Graham. Sarah Catherine Graham. Elizabeth Ann Grant, with distinction. Sabrina Christine Kathleen Grooms. Brianna Catherine Gubernat Valens, with distinction. Chloe Brianne Holman. Alicia Amira Hamid. Mariah Alana Hamilton. Alexandra Hare, with distinction. Tara Lindsay Henderson. Elisa Patricia Henry. Ariana Jennifer Hogan. Deanna Jean Hope. Sarah Patricia Hughes. Lauren Grace Irwin. Okay. Magdalena Ivasechko. Avery Emma Rios Jenikins. Sarah Jones, with distinction. Kelsey Lynn Jovicevich with distinction. Taylor Alexandra Kelly. Alexandra Nora Kennedy. Patrick Joseph Kidrowski. Michael Kusi. Paul Langis. Jacqueline Elizabeth Lewis. Wes Michael Lindinger. Kennedy Aaron McDonald. Stephanie Marks. Sarah McGuire. Anya Merkis with distinction. Amberly Jacqueline Kathleen Morris. David Mulligan. Tiffany Christine Nafziger. Juliana Catherine Oregon. Nicole Martinello Orlando. Alyssa Maria Ottema with distinction. Andrew Pappen. Ashley Amanda Passmore. Amanda Carly Penwill. Jasmine Joan Marie Pettigrew. Sarah Ramjan. Mika Lauren Hill Rodenberg with distinction. Patrick David Salmers with distinction. Sarah Maria Ferrara Savage. Anna Francesca Scola. Patrick McKay Segsworth. Vincent Shannon. Albert Donald Simpson with distinction. Samantha Elizabeth Smith. Rebecca Ellen Smithers. Savannah Louise Snook. Okay, go ahead. Joy Son. Hudson Brooks Sowery Quinn. Kelsey Stankovic. Loretta Ann Steeper. Hava Steinmetz Kumbo with distinction. Katrina Rosemary Stubbs. Michelle Helen Suko. Amanda Elizabeth Sutton. Cleo Francis Vaillancourt with distinction. Elise Ann van den Bosch with distinction. Jessica Deanne Watkin. Cameron Wheaton. Hilary Donna Verbena White with distinction. Mark Williams. Samantha Page Walkensberg. Robert Lawrence Warmold. Darren Joseph Wright. And let's congratulate this group of scholars. Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you these scholars from the College of Arts that they may be admitted to the degree of Bachelor of Arts General Program. Alison Arkell. Catherine Connor. Shelby Cook. Megan Catherine Couture. Christopher Benjamin Deacon. Brody Pippi Dyson. Gregory Douglas Ecclestone. Vanessa Ledwina Farrow. Sarah Flaherty. Rachel Giffen. Melanie Elizabeth Grant. Emma Hillier. Melissa Hughes. Demetria Patrice Jackson. Sarah Hermina Kroll with distinction. Penny Leach. Filippo Livingston. Vincent Lonsdale. Ross William John McBeath. Melissa Marietta Cecilia McDonald. Brian Charles Edward Marks. Raha Nazad Medhat. Sarah Joyce Mezzi. Kimoy Roxanne Morrison. Jessie Elizabeth Murray. Michelle Paul. Emma Marie Rader. Megan Lee Russell. Robin Dara Stalkey. Rebecca Marie Safran. Elias George Tsafaridis. Mary Teresa Visser-Kerr. Caitlin Walker. Sydney Diane Whalen. Samantha Wood. Robin Marie Rona. Dakota Elizabeth Yip. Brian Douglas Young. Alexander Harrison Zimmerman. And let us congratulate this second group of scholars. Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you these scholars from the College of Arts that they may be admitted to the degree of Bachelor of Arts and Science Honors Program. Cassandra Margaret Fritz, with distinction. Ma Young Han. Osta Hamanwen Shoban Imaswen. Ashley Cronenfeld. Zesty and Jerry Lynn Robinson. Daisy Carolino Trujillo Leon. And let us congratulate this third group, including Zesty.
How about give it up one more time for the dean, who did a great job with all the names. Mr. Chancellor, I would ask you to confer the various and several degrees on the graduate listed in the program, but unable to be present at this ceremony.
By virtue of the authority vested in me and in the University of Guelph, I confer the various and several degrees in absentia on the graduands not present.
Mr. Chancellor, so you actually did it. You finished, and you are now graduates of the University of Guelph. Congratulations. You're also fully fledged Guelph Griffins. And now would be the time to stride away into your new life, but you've got me to contend with before you can do that. And I'd just like to spend a few minutes reflecting with you on what it means to be a Griffin. What does it mean that you take away from here? Well, I hope you take away a great deal of knowledge. Not the precise information that you needed to be able to pass those papers and exams, because I suspect that much of that has already evaporated. What I hope is that you have learned what it means to be a critical, aware, and caring citizen. An individual who can actually take information and generate knowledge and wisdom. Someone who cares about the planet and the people around you. A person who knows how to do things. A person who wants to change lives and improve life. As parting, I would like to give you some advice, and I'm going to suggest that you might think about the Griffin Code. It's a way, perhaps, of helping you identify how you can make a difference, not only in your own lives, but in the lives of others. So I have a mantra to help, a list of words, all starting with the letter L, that I hope will both help define you, but perhaps, more importantly, help sustain you on those days when you feel less confident. Because let me assure you that all of us, no matter who we are, no matter how successful we appear to be, we all have days, we all have moments when doubts creep in and you wonder whether it was worth it. So here are 7 L's to think about. Number 1, live. Live life to the fullest, every single moment of it. Push yourselves to do something new. Try everything, at least once. You'll never know whether you really like it or not if you don't try. And you might just find that it is incredible fun, or at least you'll have a funny story to tell people about the silly thing that you tried to do. So live. The second is laugh. Laugh at yourself and others. Nothing should ever be too serious for you not to find something to laugh about. When I first started to work in the refugee camps in Kenya, I was really puzzled. Despite the fact that these people have nothing, absolutely nothing, and that I was looking into the faces that were a mere facade over deep and unimaginable sadness and tragedy in their own lives, these people laugh. Why would they do that? And then I realized they laugh in the face of adversity to chase away gloom and to defy despair. They laugh to make their lives better and the lives of other people. So live, laugh, and the third is learn. Never stop learning. Only by being alert to the changing world around you, by being flexible and alive to possibilities, and taking the time really to learn about a situation, will you ever be able to live a life that is filled with possibilities, change, and hope. So live, laugh, learn, listen. Only by truly listening to others will you really understand what is going on in this world. But don't just listen to them. Listen to your own heart. Deep down, we all have a passion. We all have a voice, a moral compass, a sense of what is right or wrong, what makes us happy or sad. Listen to that heart and work tirelessly to hear the beatings of its rhythm and the pulse of others, to know how to act with courage and commitment. So live, laugh, learn, listen, and leave. Know when it is time to go. Know when it is time to move on and leave others behind to take up your work. Have confidence that the footprints you leave behind will make a difference, especially if you've done your job well. Those prints will be an indelible mark on the lives of others, and the shifting sands of time will not wash them away, but create a permanent memento of what you have done, what you have achieved, but through the lives of others. Live, laugh, learn, listen, leave. And we all need the sixth one, luck. All of us require that special piece of magic to see and seize the opportunities before us. But we need to be on the lookout for them. They happen all the time, but they're often disguised in work. William Jefferson once said, "Opportunities," I think his word for luck, usually comes dressed in overalls. He was trying to say that you have to put effort into your own life in order to create the luck. Live, laugh, learn, listen, leave, luck. And the last one? I'm going to leave that to a demonstration. I'm going to ask the graduating class to stand up and turn round and face the people who have provided you with the seventh L and give them a huge round of applause for what they've done. Please sit down again. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a beautiful experiment in human behavior. You stood up and turned round, and some of you went like this, and the people on the other side went like this back. And then it became like this, until there were people waving to each other. That's the seventh L. So now that you are a fully fledged Griffin, go out and take on this world, because we really need you. In a world that is riven by injustice, that is challenged by dogma and prejudice and disadvantage, our absolute hope is in you. Do something. Do something. I don't care whether you decide to take on one of the leadership roles in dealing with some of these daunting challenges. And perhaps there will be one or two of you that do that. But I'm going to ask you to do something much more important. And that is to ask each and every one of you to make a commitment now, that every day for the rest of your lives, you will seek to improve the life of at least one other person. And how do you do that? Well, it's actually really simple. Do you remember that little experiment? Humans are very strange animals, but there is something that distinguishes us from all other animals. And that is that if you smile at a human being, no matter how grumpy or miserable or sad or depressed they are, or angry, if you keep smiling, just as you're doing, people smile back, and in doing so, you improve their life at a simple stroke. Find ways to include people of all ages and stages, all genders and races, in everything that we do to make this a better planet. So, take your parchment. Take the values and ideals that you have learned here. Take your friendships that will last a lifetime. And armed with your Griffin code, get out of here. Those of us that are left behind will be watching you with great pride. But before you go, I have a real favor to ask. You absolutely represent the future, and I would like a memento of that by taking a selfie. If I can make this thing work, by taking a selfie that will include you so that I can remember that I've had a hand in your future. Thank you. Just excuse me a moment. Following convocation, the Dean has made arrangements for there to be a reception in the atrium of the Science Complex, and I really hope that you'll take the time to go and share with family and friends. Please take lots of pictures. Yesterday, the weather people promised that it was going to be a deluge all day, and it wasn't. And today, they promised again that we would be besieged by rain, and so far, it hasn't. So go outside and take lots of pictures, because those will become the memories that you will bring back time and time again. And when you come back at Alumni Weekend, as we will have people doing in a couple of weekends' time, you'll be able to bring out those pictures and look at them and gaze upon what you looked like as you walked across this stage. And we're going to have people this Alumni Weekend come back who are actually 60 years since they graduated. And I bet they'll do the same as all the others and say, "You haven't changed a bit." But in the interim, you'll be able to laugh about why did you wear your hair so long so it got trapped in your hood and you had to flick it out? Was I really that silly that I used those incredibly high-heeled shoes to try and walk across the stage, which was so painful, and that I don't normally wear at all? And I'm not sure what the girls are going to be saying. Take lots of pictures, because they will be the memories that will bind in your brain of being at the University of Guelph. Before you go, though, today, please remember to return your gowns, either in the tent behind where you got them from or over in the Science Complex. You can drop them off there. And one more favor. We're doing 20 of these ceremonies this week, so there is a mass of people waiting in that direction to come into the room, and I want to preserve the future by allowing you to escape alive. So when the procession has left the stage, would you mind leaving by these doors, and then you won't be crushed by the tsunami of people coming in from behind. I celebrate and salute your successes, and I wish you every success in the future. Thank you.
Convocation is dismissed.